Let's take a look at the front page of the Australian newspaper. No surprises for guessing what is on the front page of this leading masthead. Let's start with, I want to start with the story. The main headline there is "A Nation in Shutdown," and it's going through the various actions taken by New South Wales, all of the states, Victoria, Queensland, the states and territories. But I want to have a look, if we can, at the story to the side of that, the $66 billion lifeline for a deeper shock. And this is by Patrick Cummins and Richard Ferguson, everybody's favourite Scotsman, certainly mine, and detailing the stimulus package that's been announced today. And on the right, there's a bit of a stimulus at a glance, up to $100,000 for small and medium businesses to keep staff in jobs, government to guarantee 50% of loans to small businesses, $550 a fortnight for those on benefits, a range of stimulus announcements there. Campbell, can I get your take on this one first up, please?
Well, I think it's a great package for business, and I am in business, and I've had a good look at it today, and I think it's going to help the businesses that I work with, particularly small retailers in some of the shopping centres that we manage for our investors, and they are under enormous stress, so it can't come soon enough. I think there are things that the government could do to speed up the process, but I'm not going to quibble about that. I will say one other thing, though. There is a glaring hole in all of this, and it's not the federal government's fault. The states and local government need to waive their taxes, their fees and charges in totality. So, for example, Daniel Andrews has been good in that he said we're going to waive payroll tax. Fantastic. In Queensland, they're not doing any of that. But Daniel Andrews should go further. He should waive land tax, and he should put the weights on councils. I think he is waiving land tax, isn't he? Is he not? Is he waiving or just postponing? I could be wrong. Payroll tax is definitely being waived. That's great because Queensland's not doing it. But I'd say this evening, I'd implore state premiers to do two things. One, waive land tax and payroll tax in totality for the next 3 to 6 months. And secondly, make local government waive the rates, because all those imposts are on those small, medium-sized enterprises right now. That's cash going out the door. I know someone who rang a council, well, it was the Brisbane City Council actually, and asked for deferment and was told essentially they'd be hit with 9.9% interest on their payment plan to pay in the future, but no waiver, a deferral, and they had to pay almost 10% interest. So not a good outcome there.
Well done. Well, if local councils want to continue to render themselves irrelevant, they're doing the right way about it. I'm reliably informed by Joshua that the land tax in Victoria is being deferred, is a deferment there, not a complete waiver, but a deferment of the land tax in Victoria. Kate Emery, what's your take on this package? Have you had much time to decipher it?
Yes and no. If I try and drill down to the detail, I'll probably bungle it all. But just picking up on the point on local government, as you may or may not know, I used to be local government reporter for the West Australian.
For your sins,
no
Kate.
longer. And I have been really surprised, and at the same time not surprised, that there has been a real deafening silence in terms of the response from the local governments. I had sort of thought that they would perhaps come out on the front foot. As you say, there's some really obvious things that they could do, and I know that they, say that they too feel the pinch all the time, but there's some really obvious and easy things they could do, and I'm surprised they haven't, and I hope that behind the scenes, perhaps at the state government level, there's some pressure being applied and saying, come on, guys.
Yeah.
And the other thing really that sticks out from the package, I feel like I'm running through my resume here, but I was also the West's business reporter and a stock market reporter at the time of the GFC, which at the time obviously was a huge deal.
Of course.
You know, these numbers coming out of this stimulus just really blows apart anything that we were looking at sort of at the GFC. And to me, it just underscores that this is something on a scale that we haven't really seen yet, but in a generation at least, and the level of it is just hard to get your head around.
Very true. Let's keep moving to the AFR. Catherine McGregor, the AFR is also looking obviously at this stimulus package. The story there by Phil Coury, the political editor. No, that's the Daily Telly. Let's take a look at the AFR. And think we might be missing that one, the joys of live TV, but I promise you the front page of the Australian Financial Review is talking about the same package. Kate McGregor, the Prime Minister, is talking about a third potential package coming through. You know, to pick up on a point that you made at the very beginning of the show that I think we really need to labour is that there is no playbook for this. There are playbooks for bushfires, for floods, for natural disasters in a country like this, but nobody has led their country through a pandemic. Nobody has led their country through a disease so virulent that it is literally racing through the population at the way that it is. So for the armchair experts lobbying grenades from the cheap seats, it is very disingenuous, because I think the grand take is that the Prime Minister and the National Cabinet, I must say, are doing an incredible job of leading through genuinely uncharted waters, and that includes packaging up, you know, those people who have said, oh, the first package wasn't big enough. Well, they didn't know what was coming. You know, it was probably considered big enough in the moment that it was designed.
As were all the social distancing measures that now seem antiquated a couple of weeks later, and none of us could foresee that, or the spike, or the bungling of the docking of that ship in New South Wales. So there's plenty of blame to go round. I'm with Campbell. I think we've got to look at execution of some of this policy as well. Like, I think the government's stepping up really well. This is a big package. It's, you know, they've dug deep into their pockets, and they're willing to dig deeper. They've foreshadowed that tonight. But how is it implemented at the ATO end? It sounds like we've got a couple of self-employed people. I'm one of them. How much flexibility in execution of BAS statements, for instance? Are you going to get roughed up if you ask for some forbearance there, or pay in instalments if you get slugged? My work's dried up, so I'm probably expecting a modest one this quarter, but I've not found them to be conspicuously sensitive to people who are self-employed. And I second his remarks also about the state and local government implementation of these things. A lot of overhead at small business level is in the remit of councils and state governments, and there just needs to be a touch of humanity and emotional intelligence applied. You know, just one anecdote out of this guy I buy coffee off, you know, broke down and cried. Really terrific fella, running a little business of his own. He just said, are they going to shut me down? Now, a week ago, I said, I don't think so. Where'd you hear that? And he said, well, every coffee shop in New York's being closed. And I said, it won't happen here, mate. Here we are. And that's, you know, it's a rapidly moving thing. And so that guy was putting people off last week, and I'm seeing people I've known for years walking away with their life in shreds. You know, they're probably 1 or 2 pay cycles from sleeping in their car. And I don't want to overstate that, but we do need some flexibility in the execution of revenue collection. It's one thing for the government to pump prime, but the agencies who are at the coalface need to show a little bit of common sense and a bit of humanity in the implementation of policy as well.
That's so true.
Well, can I just come on the... Can I?
Yeah, for sure.
Can I just come on the back of that and make another really important point here? I'll make it quickly. There are going to be 100,000 or more Australians very quickly have lost their jobs. Okay? The private sector is bleeding, it's hurting. I turn to the public sector. The feds have put serious money on the table. But you know what? No public servant has lost their job that I'm aware of across the 3 levels of government, and no one's taken a pay cut. So we end up having a situation where real pain in the private sector and a public sector that doesn't suffer. Feels no pain, doesn't put its shoulder to the wheel, and that's a big issue for our society.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and you're not the first to say that. The public sector must come to the table. Must. That's not an option. Surprised it hasn't been. I'm surprised it hasn't been raised yet.